Hello everyone and you're welcome. So I just created a tutorial for Substance Designer, and what I want to do is to create a nice thumbnail to kind of like use on YouTube. Now I could just simply grab this image right here of the software I'm using, but that would be quite boring. So what I want to do is to like find a very nice angle that will showcase what I'm working with right here. So I'm just trying to find, I believe this is a nice angle with the lights coming in from this side like so. What I'll do is just zoom out a little bit, and let's see. I think here is not a bad, this is not a bad view. At least everyone gets to see we're creating these rocks and then that light just shining in from the side. I think I kind of like this view. Also here I'm contemplating whether to show this effect right here, so I'll just leave this. I kind of like the normal map as well, because most people who use this software actually understand this is a normal map. So I'll leave this view and I'll take a screenshot of this view. So what I'll do is to open my snipping tool, click on new, and I'll just drag this over like so. I think I took out the bottom as well. I don't want to take the snip of this bottom, so I'll say no to that, and I'll try to center this. I think this is okay. And let me just try that one more time. So I'll click on the snipping tool, click on a new snip, and I'll just drag this to the bottom. Make sure I don't take the other snip of the items at the bottom, and that's fine. So I'll save this as a PNG file. I'll just call this snip final, and I'll open up Affinity Designer. So basically what we're going to do is to create a nice thumbnail that contains the logo of the software we're using as well, because it helps. And let's go ahead and create a new project. So I'm going to go to new, and here this is the resolution I work with. So on the layout you can use 1920 by 1080 pixels. YouTube uses 1080 by 720, but I just like using a HDR. And also for the dimensions, I'm going to click on landscape, the orientation. So let's go ahead and click create, and this should create a blank empty document for us to work with in Designer. Awesome. So the first thing I want to do is to save the project in the same location where I have my assets. So just in case there's an issue, so I'll just go over here. It's my lecture on what is Substance Designer, and I'll just say I'll just call this thumbs. Yeah, I'll just call that project thumbs. So now that we've created that project, what I'll do is to click on the place image tool. This is going to open up a dialog and wants me to impute the snip final image. So I'll just click on snip final and click open, and click on this, and I'll just try to drag and center this. So because of that, my screen dimension is the same size as the dimension of that document, so I didn't really have to adjust it. But in case you want to adjust it, it's simple. Click on the object and you can drag these sides like so. I also turned on snaps, so if I click on this, snapping guides are off. So if you click on this, as you've disabled snapping. Click on this, you've enabled snapping. It just helps with positioning objects and items here. So this is going to be my background layer, so I'll just click on this key just to lock this guy right here. So what I want to do is to create a nice text here, and let's just click on this, and I'll click over here and just drag a nice selection. And what I'll do is to change the size to a kind of like large size, so I'll set this to 36, and I'll just type in with caps, see what is Substance Designer. Now this might be super large, and you actually see this red eye icon. It just means this text is overflowing. So I'll go over here, I'll select the text using left click to highlight it, and I'll go over here and set this to 24. I think 24 is not a bad size, and I'll set this to bold, and I'll also change the text color to white. Right, so we can actually see the text quite clearly if I use the move tool or press V. I can just move this using the move tool, and you can actually see what we're doing right here. So we have this text, and it's quite readable. So what I usually like doing is to create a nice, slightly darker dim of this to have a nice background on this object. So to do that, I'll just click the rounded rectangle tool or press M, and for the fill, I can just click on this fill and select okay, sorry, it's changing the color of our text. It's the marquee tool I want to change, so I'll just draw this shape right here to cover the entire text like so. So I'll click on the move tool just to center this, and it's white so we can't actually see the text because the text has the same color, and I'll drag this and put it underneath right here. You can also use the shortcut at the top, say move back 1, so this is going to be underneath our background. If I go over here and say move forward 1, we can actually place things up or down, or we can just click and drag it. So we can actually see it's behind our text. So I'll make our fill slightly dark. So you can do that from here, or you can click the color swatch and you can actually see that's cool. I'll try and make it a color that is quite similar to the Adobe Substance Designer, because the logo for Substance Designer has a greenish, dark green background with a white text. Basically that's how it looks. You can actually see it from the icons at the bottom. It's a D and S and it's quite dark, so let's just make this a dark green. And for the text, I'm going to use the same similar kind of like yellowish color, so it doesn't have to be super yellow like that, but I'll just drag this a little bit, and I think that's super fine. That's super great. So let me see if I can check the alright, so that's the value I'm using, and basically I'm just eyeballing what I want that design to look like. Now again, this might be covering our entire object, so what I'll do is to set a little transparency if we want. So what we can also do to enhance this text is to add a little highlight on this text. So I'll click on the text and click on these layer effects, and I'll click on an outer glow, outer shadow. Let's see, I think it's outer glow. So now let's click on the outer glow and let's set a radius. Actually see a little glow like that, and I'll set this to a dark value, and let's turn up the radius and see again. So I'll just drag this radius, so we're having a nice little glow. I think that's super good. I don't want to overdo this. So, and also next for this, let's duplicate this because I want to add a little text effect for that background. So I've duplicated it, so I'll click the one on the bottom and use V, sorry, and I'll just click and drag that up a little bit. And what I'm going to do is just turn down the opacity like so. And also for this one, let's head over here and click on this layer, and then what we can do is to also lower down that opacity just a little bit so we can see through the background. So we actually have a few of these items in the background. I'll just click on this and hold down shift and just move this down a little bit. And what I can also do is to change the color to a slightly to a monochromatic, using a monochromatic color palette. I'll just change this color here. So basically that is so what is Substance Designer? And what I want to do is to create, like, should we I'm just thinking if I want to add a question mark symbol just to indicate and say, hey, you know what, this is a we're asking a question here. So basically what I'll do is, what is Substance Designer? And since this is a question, I'll just add a question mark at the ending like so. And what I'll do is to select the entire text and set the text size to say 20, so that I'll have that text aligned. And I'll just click and drag this and place it over here. So I think that's super great. So what I also want to do is to create that question mark. So I'll quickly use the pen tool to create the question mark. So here I'll just do this and then start creating a nice kind of like a question icon like so. It doesn't have to be perfect. So basically we have this. So what I'll do is to go over to the fill and I'll select this dark fill color like so. Again, I'm actually looking at the theme for the software. So I'll set this to white, sorry, and I'll just go over here and kind of like drag this over here. Right, so we're not really done with this yet. I'll just go over to the node tool and try to smooth out these edges. So if you have a very kind of like hard shape, what you can do is to just smooth out these edges. So I'll just click on this edge right here for this node and set this to a smooth curve. Also do that for this edge. Make this smooth. Just drag this down a little bit. The same thing for this edge. Make it smooth. This edge as well, make it smooth. And I'll just go around this real quick just to make the question mark more organic. So here I'll just select this guy. And also you can select an edge to delete an edge as well. And you could just move this edge. So one cool thing about paths is that you actually need less paths to achieve a very smooth look. So I'll just go ahead and reduce some of these and just try to okay, that's not really good. So yeah, I think that's for our mini question mark. I'll just move this guy right here, and what I can do is just go over this edge and just kind of make that slightly puffy. Do the same thing here. This might not be the best question mark on the planet, but I think you get the idea. So with this, I'll just move this to the side, and let's create this one and just kind of like place this right here. A nice little round shape. And what we can also do is to reduce the size. So I'll combine these two together. I'll click on both of them. So I click on the circle and I hold Control and click on the curve and press Control G so I can group them together. I'll now hold Shift so I can scale this down, and I can just place like one and rotate it. So basically it's so let's duplicate that group. I have another one, and finally let's do another one. So I'll do Control J with the group selected and have another one like so. And what I'll do is just kind of like scale them down a bit so they are all different sizes. Like so, right? So if we kind of like look at that, we can actually see these question marks. What is Substance Designer? And we have questions around. So this is actually quite interesting. So again, so finally what I'll do is to quickly add a small logo to show what that is. So let's go ahead and just click this. Let's click and drag. I'll make this green, make it super dark, and then I'll add a text. So let's click away. I'll click on the texts and I'll go over here and I'll just do a short just type the letter D, so it's caps D and S, like so. Nothing too fancy. So I'll just we can increase this just to make sure this object is aligned to the center, and I'll just drag this, place it right here, and I'll make this slightly dark. So yeah, so that's that's the designer logo. That's a very poor design. So but hey, that's it. So this here, I'll just rotate this a little bit. I'll rotate the text to follow as well. I think that's super fine. So it also helps to, you know, drop in the logo. And oh, okay, again, I'll need to group this. So click on the designer, hold Control, click on the around the rectangle, press Control G to group this, and now we can just move them together. So we're actually saying what is Substance Designer, and we actually have this designer, but we actually look at this, it's blocking our nice interface. So what I'll do is to hold Shift and click on the group. So basically I'm clicking the text designer group and the question mark group like so, and I'm also grouping them. So I'll just say shapes. Okay, now I cannot spell shapes. So with this shape selected, what I'll do is just drag the shape over here, like so. Now don't worry about this. It's showing us that it doesn't understand what these squiggly lines are, and that's totally fine. So next, I would like to add a little effect around the edges. So what I'll do is to create I'll just use this rounded rectangle tool and just draw a shape here above. And what we can do right now is to add a little effect on this guy, just to add that effect along the bottom. So I'll use the transparency tool, just click and drag this to make it slightly transparent. And since I'm using a kind of like let's use a complementary color palette. So that's the transparency tool, and I'll select this object, the rounded rectangle, and we'll just change the color to something slightly warmer, just to give this bottom some slight highlights, so we can actually see this effect. It's not really in the way. And what I also like to do is to add a layer effect. So I'll add a Gaussian blur, just to blur out some of those edges, like so. Alright, so we actually see we're blurring out this edge. And what I'll do is just duplicate this. So I'll do a Control J, and I'll hold down Shift and drag this and put it to the top as well, like so, because the main focus I want is for this to be on the texts and the background. So I'll just lower down this opacity a little bit. So this gives it a classy kind of like old school vignette effect, which is awesome. And also for this shape group, what I'll do is just lower down the opacity a little bit. And I think we're super good to go. So what I'll do next is to select everything. I'll just use Control A to select it all, and hold on Control as well, and select this and press Control G, and I'll call this all. Press the return key and press Control S to save. And what I'll do is to add a layer effect. So here, if we click on this adjustments, I can click on the, let's try HSL, and this will allow us to pump out the colors like so. So that might be super, that's super too much. So I'll just slightly drag this a little bit. And also I'm going to reduce this just to kind of like see what's happening. So it's there and it's super fine, just a little bit of that. And I'll also add another adjustment layer. I'll add the levels adjustment node. And what I'll do is to drag the dark levels, just to make this slightly dark. And for the output white level, I'll just drag this just to bump this out as well. And what I usually like to add is a little kind of like cutout here. So what I'll do is to use the pen tool to add a nice little diagonal slash like so. And I'll just fill this with a color so we can actually see how that is looking. And I'll duplicate that. And I'll change the color of the one in the bottom to something slightly bright, like yellowish. And what I'll do is to mask this underneath. So this is masked underneath. And let's see, it's using the same, oh, it's using the same color. So sorry, what I wanted to do was to duplicate the layer first. So I'll do Control J, which I believe is what I just did. So but I'll just set this to a different value. So the one under is going to have a different value. So again, I'll just clip this. And now what I can do is to use the move tool just to move this a little bit. And I'll use the transparency tool just to hide out some of that to give it a nice kind of like lighting effect on the edge. And if we drag the levels above adjustment to be above this, this will actually work. Alright, so I believe this is fairly okay. We have our little text, we have the software logo with some question marks, we have this edge. So what's left is for me to kind of like group them all again, just to have everything in one group, and I'll just call that final. And again, we can use the adjustment layer to kind of like change the entire, color wheel to affect the entire set, like so if we want. But I think that's overkill, so I'll just delete that. I don't need that. I'll just leave this as it is. And finally, let's export this. So I'll click on export, and I'll export the whole document, and it's going to be 1920 by 1080, and click on export, and then we'll just call that final thumbs. So yeah, so that's how you can create a nice thumbnail with some text effects. We saw how we can use layers, create layer masks to work with our object. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next thumbnail tutorial.